Our next guest I've been looking forward to talking to for some time. Becky Bond is Vice President and Political Director of CREDO. She helps, and if you don't know what CREDO is, you're not a full-fledged member of the zero-hour ranks yet, and you should go out because it's and find it because it's the nation's only progressive phone company. And as Nancy Altman and Eric Kingston wrote in the Huffington Post, is a leader in understanding that it takes a movement to win true progressive change. But Becky, with all your great background and all the great things in your bio and the fact you haven't owned a car since 2006, which, by the way, you ain't missing much. I'm struck by the fact that it says you're proud of being arrested twice during your tenure at CREDO, first for protesting the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and then protesting the Keystone XL pipeline. I was arrested like at an anti-Vietnam War demonstration when I was 15 and then like some teenage hooliganism or something. So you win. And thanks so much for being with us.
Well, I'm really happy to be with you. I'm a longtime reader of your columns, Richard. So it's an honor to be with you on the radio. We follow your thoughtful commentary and you're a real leader in the movement. And I want you to know that everyone here at CREDO, looks to you for policy, trenchant policy analysis that really helps us guide our activism. So I appreciate it.
Well, what a great thing to say. That's so kind of you. Thank you. And I just want to bask in that moment for a moment. But no, I really do appreciate that. That's very kind of you. It's funny when you're a writer or, for that matter, an activist like yourself. Sometimes I think you feel like you're working you're dropping pennies down a well and waiting to hear the splash. You never really know the impact. So the feedback is very much appreciated. And certainly I've been an admirer of your work and CREDO's work for a long time. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on now was not just to push the great things that CREDO does and that you do, although that was one motive, but you, the organization, gave Social Security Works, which is the primary sponsor of this show, in fact, funds this show, gave them a very significant grant, and I was curious to know your thinking in that.
We have sort of the opposite of corporate giving here at CREDO. In most corporations, there's like a closed room, boardroom, where people like the Koch brothers sit around and decide how to use their profits to fund right-wing groups. And customers, if they actually understood where some of the money was going that they were giving that corporation, would just be appalled. But at CREDO, we do it exactly the opposite. Customers of CREDO Mobile Phone or the CREDO credit card, they nominate groups that they think are great, that they think CREDO should fund, and then all of the staff at CREDO are involved in sorting through all those nominations. And each year we pick 36 groups that we want to fund with our customers' phone bills and credit card bills over the course of the year, and then we actually let the customers vote. So I think what we saw this year with such a large grant going to Social Security Works is that the progressive movement is really recognizing, how important this fight is to protect programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and also how vital the work of Social Security Works has been in terms of being a leader in that fight. And at CREDO, one of the things that's so great about being part of CREDO's activism is that not only do we run great companies to generate money that we can give away to groups like Social Security Works, but we also are involved in organizing our members to be involved directly in activism. So we're able to fund Social Security Works, but we're also able to work with the great folks there on a day-to-day basis to fight the battles that we need to protect these programs. And our members. So I'm very proud that we gave over $190,000 to support that work, but I'm just as proud of the fact that CREDO Action members made over 50,000 calls to Congress to protect these programs, that's an enormous number of calls, and the community has done an enormous amount of turning out, calling their representatives, showing up at meetings, boots on the ground kind of stuff to protect these programs.
Well, and I think both of us are always talking about this and the constituencies you and I represent, the fields you and I represent. But I think this message can't be emphasized too much. Those kinds of calls matter, don't they? I mean, representatives and senators, when they're flooded with calls, when they get even a dozen calls that say hands off Social Security, that gets heard, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely, especially when there's something like cutting Social Security benefits. And people in Washington, D.C., they know that the vast majority of the voters do not want them to cut those programs. And so knowing that those of us who are not in Washington D.C., those of us who are voters, regular citizens, knowing that we know what they're doing, right? When we put them on notice and we say, don't cut any backroom deal to cut Social Security benefits. We're watching. We know what we know chain CPI. That's not some sort of budget math. That's cutting Social Security benefits. And when we can have regular people call up in great numbers and let them know, hey, we're watching. Don't do that. We know that's a benefits cut. It totally puts the senators and representatives on notice, and it can change their behavior.
And what's so interesting to me about a group like Social Security Works is, that's the cynical view in Washington is, well, that's an old people's issue. And I am proud to say that my 90-year-old member is a CREDO my 90-year-old mother is a CREDO customer, although she's not quite well enough to use it anymore. But one of the things that strikes me as being so valuable about this message is that Social Security Works and like-minded individuals are really conveying the message that this is not a special interest issue. This is something that binds the generations together in a covenant of mutual support and respect. And I think that when that message gets delivered and when the callers aren't, representing a constituency that's easily pigeonholed and dismissed by leaders in Washington, I think that's tremendously effective. So I congratulate you guys for mobilizing those calls as well as for raising the money. And what should people be looking for in terms of CREDO's activity in the upcoming year, as well as thinking about in terms of their own involvement in the upcoming year? You got any thoughts on that?
Well, I think one thing that we as progressives understand that hardly any of our victories are permanent, and so we have to remain vigilant. And it's unfortunate to say that we can't simply vote for people and send them to Washington D.C. and expect them to fulfill their campaign promises without real pressure. So we have to keep the pressure on. We're not out of the woods yet on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid benefit cuts. So we have to keep the pressure on and let the people in Washington D.C. know that we're watching, and make sure that they're not going to raise the Medicare eligibility age. Make sure they're not going to add means testing to Social Security benefits. There's a lot of work to be done there. CREDO, we're also, and I think you share this, is that we see ourselves as part of the progressive flank in this movement. And so what we do at CREDO is we don't try to, ask for whatever compromise is possible, but we ask for the change that we really want to see. And so in the course of the next year, and we invite people to join us, CREDO is going to be pushing very hard to get the president to take real action on climate change, from rejecting the Keystone XL pipeline to passing strong rules to limit carbon emissions from existing power plants, you name it. We're also going to be working really hard on minimum wage, which I know is something that you've written about, Richard. And in fact, I actually read your column earlier, I guess last week, talking about, we're pushing for a 10-10 minimum wage, but maybe that's actually not enough. And so we need to be pushing for a living wage. And the more we push for the change that we need to see, even if we don't win, we may end up with a minimum wage that's higher than 10-10 to begin with. So we're going to be pushing for the change we need to see, and we invite all your listeners to join us in that activism, because our work never ends and our victories are never permanent. But if we organize, they have money, but we have people. And if we can organize and put together our money and put together our people and our activism, then we have a real shot at winning some of the important battles that face us ahead.
Well said. And where can people go to find out more about CREDO and especially about CREDO's political activism?
So you can join us. There's a website called CREDOaction.com, and that's where it starts. Sign any petition at CREDOaction.com, and then you're on our email list, and then we'll be letting you know about opportunities to take action. Another great way to follow what we're doing is our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/CREDO, where we're posting several times a day about the stories that we're following and our reactions to what's happening in the world and ways that you can get involved.
Becky Bond, Political Director of CREDO, thanks so much for being with us.